Greetings, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, we're back here with the final episode of my 31 favorite albums that were released in December. This is day number 31. This is album number 1. I had some misgivings. I was going to put this one down second, but ultimately I just had a longer history with this album, and it's just as good as the one I put in the second spot. Maybe not as hard rockish, but definitely a lot progressive. We're talking about Wind in the Wuthering, number 1, from Genesis, released the same year as Trick of the Tail, which is coincidentally my favorite Genesis album, but this one's my favorite, released in December. So, absolutely killer album. There is everything in this album that you could want. Just the only sadness about this album for me, other than its gray, kind of overstated grayness and murkiness from the cover and everything, that make it a kind of feel sad album in some ways. The only thing really sad to me about it is that it's the end of an era for Genesis. Steve Hackett leaves after this, and you're left with a 3. Not that the 3 weren't bad, but I just think this is kind of the last of that masterpiece era for them album. So it starts out, of course, with 11th Earl of Mar and the killer track. This was probably my favorite Genesis song for many years until I discovered the Peter Gabriel era. One for the Vine, just an absolutely epic, gripping song. I find myself listening to the lyrics and trying to figure out where they're going, and yeah, just an absolute killer track. In Your Own Special Way, yeah, it's a little bit of a beginning of those ballads for them. I think this is probably the first kind of ballad-like song that they did. I mean, maybe they did a few others on some of the old Gabriel stuff that they let Phil Collins sing on a couple tracks. This one, probably better than those, I think. I always liked it, but I can clearly see that this was kind of the direction that they wanted to kind of go. What Gorilla, that's the one track on the album I never really warmed up to too much. I don't dislike it. They tend to do this at the end of their albums, at least the first 2 they did with Phil Collins. They did it again on Los Endos, on Trick of the Tail. They're both good, kind of interesting, but they don't really capture much of me. I don't pay much attention to them. Then we flip to the other side where you've got All in the Mouse's Night, which was for a long time right up there among my favorite epic-like songs. I love the whole storytelling on this album. It's Genesis at its finest. That's, to me, when I think of Genesis, I think of the stories. I mean, Peter Gabriel started all that on their original albums, but they followed suit here on these 2 and maybe did a better job in some ways. Because they're a little bit more accessible and a little bit easier to follow. I love the In the Mouse's Night. I love the whole story. You feel like a kind of an underdog. Just a great, great tune. Blood on the Rooftops, just an absolute incredible display of guitar ability by Steve Hackett, and he was somewhat suppressed by these guys, but or at least by one guy, anyways. But he's just such a absolute killer when it comes to this classical guitar parts and acoustic guitar parts. He's just absolutely a killer. And this song is one of the best by him. Unquiet Slumbers for the Sleepers in the Quiet Earth. These are both, are In the Quiet Earth is the second part. Just both really good tracks as well. And then he ends off with Afterglow, which I think is, to me, deeply underrated song. This album is a perfection in many ways. To me, it's the end of an era, and it gives off that gray feeling, like it's over. And yeah, but I still love it anyways. I love this whole look to the album, the birds, the trees. Oftentimes, I'll look at the album and see if there's things on there I haven't seen before. Anyways, this was my number 1 album for the month, for the 31 albums released in the month of December. It was my number 1 album. Really, it could have been number 2, like I said, but I decided that it just had so much more history with me. I decided I wasn't going to back off on that, and I was going to give it its due. So Wind in the Wuthering is number 1. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please hit the like and subscribe and the notification bell above my head. Any comments on the number one album or on Wind in the Wuthering, which are the same thing for me, or on any of the albums I put on the list, you can do that in the comment section below. And we will be back. I'll probably do an episode a little bit later today with some honorable mentions. I only got 3, but I wanted to do a little bit of an episode for the 3 of them anyways. So hopefully you've enjoyed this series. I'm glad that we got a chance to do this. It was pretty enjoyable for me. I didn't really know what fully to expect here because I knew that there wouldn't be a ton of albums out there released in December for the reasons I've said in some of the other episodes. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you with next month's episode, or we'll see you honorable mentions today, and we will see you starting the next month's series, which will be running in January, and we will see you then. So take care and have a good one. Goodbye.